Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Healing Home. I'm your host, Michelle, and today I'm excited, just like all Tuesdays, for my guest, but this is extra special to me because I have the pleasure of bringing on my friend Benjamin Balderson to talk with us today. And I have just been over the moon about this conversation. My mind has been just on fire with the things that I want to talk to him about. And I know that we're going to be able to go into all sorts of cool spaces. So, yeah, let's just really get into it. And, Ben, he's a talented alchemist. He's a researcher, a farmer, an off-gridder, and a heathen who strives to be as self-sufficient as possible in these modern times. He's a phenomenal man with a lot of heart and an invaluable wisdom to share. And I honestly just feel incredibly fortunate to call him a friend because Ben has just been one of my favorite researchers for a long time when I came across his stuff. And I'm just really freaking stoked to have him today. So with all that said, please help me in welcoming Ben to the stream. Hello, my friend.
Hail,
How
Michelle.
are you? Hail. How's it going?
I'm fantastic. I'm fantastic. We love you guys so much. And, it's always just such an honor when it's guys like you and Mario and like James and Rachel and Jim, when people that are really doing things and actually living what they're talking about, when those people are ones that want to associate with you, it's just, it doesn't get any better than that. It really doesn't.
I'd have to agree. And I feel the same way about you and Christy. And it's just been an honor to get to know you guys. And I've always had this deep down feeling that we would all be able to rally at some point and get to know each other better. And I just went with that feeling. And it was like, I connected with Christy during the time when you guys were going to have the thing, and her and I started talking. And I remember one time just telling her, I have this overwhelming sense that we're all going to meet someday. And she said, yes, we will. And it was almost like we had this instant connection before we had even, really known each other. And so I'm just really grateful to have you guys around. And yes, seeing you guys as an inspiration, and you've always inspired me from the first time I saw some of your videos, and just honored to have you. So,
honored to be on. And honestly, apparently we were meant to meet when we did, because that was one of the most epic events ever. And, all around. So, and it was an honor to meet you guys. It was an honor to in person meet Jim and Rachel and to participate in that. And the Stonehenge and the eclipse, just the whole thing was just wow.
Yeah, it was. It really was. It was so special. And the fact that those two brought us all together, I feel like we all tied the knot in some way. In some way, we tied friends, 100%. Not friendship, And I 100%. Really hold it very dear to me. And, before we really get into it, there's one little story I wanted to tell you that I didn't even think to tell you that night at Stonehenge. But when you first had Mario on your show, which was I think it was last year sometime, while he was in the interview, I was outside just in the garden and what have you. And we have an area where we kind of just compost a lot of stuff like shrubbery and whatever. And so I was walking over to that area and I was having these thoughts about how cool it is that Mario's talking with you right now. And it's the wheels are starting to turn and all this stuff. And I looked up ahead above me and there was a bald eagle that was circling. And I thought of you as Baldy while I was thinking of you guys in the interview, right? And then just within 30 seconds of that, another bald eagle came and was circling. And before I knew it, there were 5 ahead over my head, really low. And I swear, I was like, this is Ben's energy, coming through to me just to kind of give me a nod or something. And it felt very, very powerful. And so I've always wanted to tell you that story. And I figured I needed to tell you today as we have this conversation, because I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on animals in general, because I know that you're such an animal lover. And I've recently heard you talk about how it was during your interview with James of Grounded Extracts, how you talked about, you had a particular pet that died. It may have been a dog. And ever since then, you always felt like a part of your soul had left you when you lost that pet. And I wanted to just get your opinion on how you began to connect with animals. When was your first when did you really start to first resonate with them, and how has that unfolded in your life so far?
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Um, her name is Dabby. Dabby. So, you know, in my younger years, I like most people, even though I was into the occult and had some odd thinking, I still was very much trying to live fairly close to what society expected of a person. I mean, in my own home, I did what I wanted. Um, but I joined the military when I was 17. Uh, you know, I took 2 different mechanics schools, and then I became an electrician. I was a contractor, had my own company. And when everything fell apart with me, started falling apart for me in the regular world, and I had already had a whole bunch of questions with all of that. This is all post 9/11. So I'm already really having some real strong issues. And, I didn't. So I got out of all that, and I got divorced, and I really started rejecting most everything. I'd done everything right, and I still lost. Very midlife crisis-ish type thing, only I was in my 20s. But then on the same token, I started my oldest daughter was born when I was barely 17. And I was in the Army by the time I was 17. I'd had a job, full-time job since I was 13. So it was a different time period, and so I was I had lived a lot more adult life. And then in between then also, a big experience for me was getting Wilson's disease, and then experiencing that the medications that they gave me in order to make me not have the grand mal seizures that Wilson's disease was giving me, the medications that they were giving me were wrecking me. It was, the seizures were better. I was drooling out of my mouth occasionally. I couldn't bend over and tie my shoes because I would feel like I was going to flip over. I jumped up to like 260 pounds. I just became very sedentary. I couldn't think, which made me angry. That's a thing I learned about myself. It's part of why I don't drink and things like that. If I can't think properly, it makes me very angry. I hope I don't ever get like Alzheimer's or something. I'll be an angry old bastard. Yeah. If my brain don't work right, I am mad about it. I'm like, hold on. Like,
well,
this
it makes
thing's a
sense
Ferrari.
to me. Yeah, I was going to say you have so much to offer in that sense, and like such a strong intelligence that I could see why that would be one of the things that would just kind of really be devastating for you.
Yeah, it is, and it
Mm-hmm.
makes me angry. It's like, having this awesome tool and going out and it does not work. You're like, I know this thing works. I know it does. Why doesn't it? And so then I started using cannabis, and that was probably more eye-opening for me than 9/11, to be honest. 9/11, I had some serious questions, but I wasn't post-army that long, and I already had these serious questions anyways, but I wasn't quite fully on the conspiracy end of things yet. And then I moved back to South Dakota, and in South Dakota, they do not, now it's medically illegal, and they've already passed it for recreational. They just haven't implemented it. But, years ago, South Dakota was one of the most hardcore states for the criminalization. It's one of only 2 states that you could literally get serious time for having a substance in your body. And all you had to do was have a hot piss test, and it was called possession by ingestion, and they acted just like you had it. So for less than it. So I went back to South Dakota, and honestly, I had moved from Colorado, and it was not much weed. I was like, it was when I got busted originally, it was less than 4 ounces, and I was like,
wow.
And they're sitting there talking about me like I'm Pablo Escobar in court, and I'm like, I actually stopped the court proceedings because the way they were talking, I was like, I'm the guy here for weed, right? Like I said that. I was like, because I'm going, God, they're talking about somebody in here for meth or something. Who the fuck are they talking about? Like, hey, hold on, I'm the weed guy, and they, and so I ended up doing 8 years overall in prison, and lost a substantial portion of my life, and through that. Part of the reason a lot of states take away the voting rights of felons is felons see the dark underbelly of the system. They see that everything from the police officer to the DA to the judge, they don't follow their own laws at all. They don't give a rat's ass. That's part of why I don't get involved in the whole legal rights movement that everybody's that a lot of people are real hopped up on, because I've watched courts. They don't give a shit. The judge does what the judge wants. Like, good luck. And unless you have a lot of money and a lot of power, the upper courts are not going to listen to you. They don't give a shit either. And so I've never really had any interest in going and wrestling in, it's like playing with little kids that are like that I win game. No matter what, they'll twist the rules into I win. The whole thing is I win. And that's been
kids like that were always really hard to be around too.
Absolutely.
I remember those kids.
Absolutely. And I'm pretty sure every one of them became a lawyer or a judge or whatever. Like that is how these people are. And totally. So I have no interest in that. Like you're going into their, it's like going into and wrestling pigs and expecting not to get muddy. Like the pig enjoys it in there. You're the one that's getting screwed. So I just don't have anything to do with it. Well, it's in prison that I really had my full awakening. And, but at the same time as having a full awakening, because I spent a couple of years in the hole by myself. And it's during that time that I had it. But also I hated the world. And when I came out, I really didn't want anything to do with the world. And I liked animals. I'd always been really, really good with animals. I was from a farm. And when I got out, I was super raw, but I was different. I was a different person. And I went and I got this dog. So I had a older pit bull named Tor, and he ended up living to be 16. And I went and got this pup, and it was supposed to be for my grandson. And I wanted something to protect my grandson. And my daughter never wanted to take it. And it was this little female pit bull. And she was so fucking naughty. Oh, man. I didn't think I would be able to keep her at all, much less give him to him. By the time she was 1, she was so naughty. And then all of a sudden, like overnight, she was like the best thing that ever happened. And like that dog loved me like nothing I've ever felt. And like,
yeah,
everything
I get it, man.
I hated about the world,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the things animals are here to do. And that's kind of one of the other questions I had for you too, is like when we have these connections with a certain animal, because I have the same feeling about the cat we have now, where I am just like, he's 17 and I swear every day I prep myself for thinking about, oh Lordy, when this happens, I am just going to have to really dig in because he is like a soulmate. And Mario will one of our inside jokes between the two of us is that Mario and I got together as a couple so that I could meet our cat Carl because there's some synergy there. Where it's like, oh, we got
That's
together so
awesome.
you and Carl could be together. I see. It's just our little joke. And so I typically sometimes wonder about these things. And when I heard you speak of that, I related to it because I feel that I can feel that soul connection. So in your opinion, like, what do you think that is? Could it be like, is it the fact that that animal is attached to a certain thought form that we have that brings us comfort? Or could it go further and be something like maybe we knew this animal in a past life as something else and they've come back to us to reconnect us to source or our soul or teach us lessons? What do you think about stuff like that?
I think everything evolves usually up. Most things evolve up, I think most things in the world are good. I think, even for people, like I don't honestly believe, like you never hear me talk about NPCs and all that kind of thing. Yeah, I've grown up. I remember my whole life. I remember all the kids that I grew up with. They all had their own thoughts. They all had their own weird little quirks about them. They were their own people. And yeah, after years of trying to fit into society, they all became more similar because they attempted to fit in. And that's just a programming thing. And they started getting with the program. And so by design, they became more similar, but they weren't some odd program that's just here to fill a void. They were people. And you look and people start becoming different and more. And we talk about how everybody talks about how people are ascending and we're capable of doing different things that we weren't able to do before. Well, animals are too. You start seeing weird things, and this has only been in the last 10 years, maybe, but you start seeing things like I believe it's the bonobo monkey actually has entered the Stone Age where they have favorite tools that do jobs, and they save those stones and use them for like prying open clams and doing things like that. They have specific tools that they have that they save and use over and over again for a job, which is literally just the Stone Age mentality. You have a lot of different stories where hurt animals are going to a hospital. Like, where are they getting these ideas? You see animals starting to act more and more human-like. While I really enjoyed animals, and I don't know if this is all just the change in animals or some of it's just the change in my receptiveness to this, as I became more of an awakened person, rather than programming and shutting down, I became more awake. So I don't know if some of that was me or some of both. But I don't at all recall dogs and cats and other animals acting the way that they do. They were definitely had more personality than the average person gave them credit for. But there's so many just very human things that I see out of dogs and cats, especially any animal that's very close to humans, are really starting to take on a lot of human characteristics. It's really interesting. And even cows, my cows are barely any different than a dog.
Interesting.
My,
Yeah.
my little bull, Odin, or not Odin, Vidar. Oh, Odin's not as much fun. Vidar, he's just a freaking doof. Like, the dude is a doof. He comes and fucks with me all the time. All the time. He's the damn road troll. I can't get by in the driveway without him fucking with me, and he'll stand right in front of the truck and just look at me, and he'll make me get out, and then I have to scratch him, and then he's just gonna get back in front of the truck anyways and be a shit about it. And then, like, if I'm not paying attention to him, he'll come up and he'll put they have like a hard ridge right here because they're pulled, so they're not they don't have horns, but they do have a hard ridge right here, and he'll put that hard ridge right under my ass, and he'll go like that, and he'll chuck me up into the air, and I get just a shit. Like, he's throwing me in the back of the pickup, like if I won't pay attention to him when I'm unloading hay or I'm in the way, he just chucks me like out of the way, bro. Like, you're such a dick.
Yeah, so like when you guys had all the upheaval with the weather. How did your animals how did the animals respond to that? Did they, because sometimes animals sense things, right? Like they'll be able to
Yeah.
maybe, they'll sense something ahead of time, maybe a couple minutes beforehand, and they're howling, and you're like, what are you howling at? And then the thing happens, and you're like, oh, that's what you were howling at. So how did you guys
Yeah.
navigate those waters when literally water was just like flowing onto your property and stuff? And what did that look like?
It was super interesting. So normally the cows come home at night and they sleep right down here because most of my animals are actually free range. After they kicked all the growers out of the mountains here and ran them all off, and the last so many years, I had a number of them come and ask me just to let my animals go free, and because they don't want to come out to the property if they can't grow wheat, and if they they don't want to come out here just to freaking weed whack and stuff. And so, like, let your animals come eat. And so I did. I was like, well, yeah, yeah, I'll let my animal free feed shit. Yeah. And so I just let everybody go. And the cows typically sleep down there at night, but during the storm area, I'm not even sure where they ended up going to hide, because their pen, usually they would go in their pen during a storm, but their pen turned into a river because the culvert gave out. And I don't even know where they were going. They would come back in the morning for a feed. And then we actually are just buckling down right now for a wicked storm cell that's come in again. And this one's crazy. And Garberville is supposed to have snow for a week. There's a symbol on the freaking weather thing too. Yeah, exactly. Garberville does not get snow. Like they're literally looking at snow every day. And they were talking about what was it? 5 inches to,
I don't remember.
Kirsty don't remember
either.
Yeah. It was a lot. It was stupid.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, what? And Redding is under a full snowstorm advisory. Like everything. And we have the ocean here to keep us that's why we have fog. Like, we're right next to the redwoods. And it's snowing right now, actually, as we speak.
Wow.
Yeah, and it has been on and off all day. It wasn't supposed to start snowing till tomorrow. And this part for my truck, I got my power steering went out, which my brakes are attached to. That was fun fucking finding out. I had like 2,000 pounds worth of hay bales in the back of the truck, plus my fuel tank was full, so that's 1,000 pounds. And I come in off the highway and find out that my power brakes are not there. The brakes still work, just the power assist is gone. So I've got freaking like 3,000 pounds worth of extra weight in the back of the truck, and I come in off the highway and I'm standing on the brake pedal and pulling the freaking steering wheel. I'm like, oh god, and I got no power steering, so it's not like I can quick whip or anything like that.
Right.
And yeah, so that was horrible. But It's supposed to snow for the next week, so I had to build a new shelter back here because I wasn't geared for all that, and the baby goats need better than that. So I went and had to build some new stuff for the baby goats that were born earlier this year. And the cows there, hopefully that doesn't end up flooding out again. It's snow, so it shouldn't be flowing like that.
Right. Gosh. Well, I'll be thinking of you guys as I was when all that other stuff was going down. Because yeah, there is an assault in some way, and it's they're using the weather as a weapon. And I don't know. I mean, I try and not concern myself too much with weather manipulation and all this stuff, and getting down that rabbit hole too far. But you gotta wonder, at least I do, because it's something crazy that's going on in your region, and it's just like nothing that has ever been seen before. So I don't know, man. It's really strange.
I've had a lot of people come to my house that were chemtrail deniers that came to my house, especially my one over in Redding. That Dane Wigington, he's based out of Redding, because Redding is a test zone for that kind of crap, and it's insane over there. And then when I've been through a number of times in California here now, where just like all of a sudden they'll chemtrail just like mad, and they do these black chemtrails that there's even conspiracy theorists that talk about those not existing. And I have it on video. So they will come with this black chemtrail, and it's in a bigger plane, and they lay that down, and then they lay 2 white chemtrails down underneath it, and they'll basically disappear it. The very first time I seen it was at night. I went outside to pee, and because that's what I do. It's glorious. And peeing inside it hurts. But the black chemtrail, so it was just a black spot in the sky, and I live out in the mountains with no ambient light, so the stars are amazing. And I'm like, why can't I see the stars there? And I sat there, and then it was a jet that came by, and I was like, weird. And then 2 other jets came by and covered it. That was super interesting. But then it poured. The river on my house there, it raised 24 feet, and it knocked off a huge chunk of the cliff going by where my water line was. I'm so lucky. Christy actually is the one who pulled the pump out. She's so crazy because it was like, she likes going into the water in like January and February and taking a dip, and I'm like,
nice.
You're nuts. And she went and yanked it out. I was like, wow, impressive. Yeah, she had to push off the bottom and everything.
Wow. A woman after my own heart. I love that stuff. And I had a conversation with some girlfriends of mine that I went camping with this past summer, and we were all going into this river that was just extremely cold. I mean, it was like, it had to be 40 degrees or something, because we were just a mile away from a spring. So we were just a mile away from like the headwaters of the spring, and we're going in and everything. And we were talking about how guys have a tendency to not want to go into the cold water as much as a woman would. And so it's just something I've noticed. So it's interesting that you bring that up, because I'm always like, I want to get like a tub with ice, babe, and like get in there, do like a polar plunge. And he's like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'll take a hot shower.
Why are you doing that?
Oh, dude, it's so interesting. I love that. I love it.
That's hilarious. But
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it wasn't until after I was older, I think, that I really had this relationship where I think part of it, like I said, I think is me too. Sometimes I can understand birds. And that's interesting that you were saying that about eagles, because like my mom used to always talk about that, because there was always like some big bird like that flying around me, and ravens. And we actually even had a bald eagle come and stay on our property and nested there and had its fledgling and everything. And then the parents left, and the fledgling stayed there for like until it molted once. And then after it molted the first time, it left.
Wow.
Super interesting. Yeah, that was cool.
That's awesome, because I mean, we get eagles, bald eagles, we see them quite often, but I've never had anything like that before, where there was circling and there was just multiple, and I'm like, Baldy. It's like, yeah, Baldy.
That's
so it
awesome.
was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I just love. I love. Oh, go ahead.
A number of times I've understood birds. It's very interesting, like where I can understand what birds are saying to some extent, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a word. It's very much a feeling that almost has an image attached to it.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Like
it hits you. The first time it was California northern quail, and Dabby ran up into them, and they were all screaming danger. And it hit me, and it felt like it was like a wave, and it almost dropped me to my knees. And I was like, and just this horrible danger, like, get away. And I was like, wow. And I almost wanted to run away, except for I was almost dropping to my knees, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And that was the first time. And since then, I can usually, and it's like, especially with my birds, I know what's going on, like the difference in their sounds, whether their sound is a predator sound or they're just being assholes.
Right.
Just irritating each other.
Yeah, and so that's interesting with your connection with alchemy too, because don't they call I know they'll call it the green language, but don't they sometimes call it the language of the birds as well?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, they
yes.
do.
So that totally makes sense because there's a total there's also like a folk medicine tradition or folk tale, whatever you want to say, is that if a woman touches a marigold with her foot, she will then be able to understand the language of the birds. And I've always just
Hmm.
wondered about that. And so a marigold, then I think of gold. And obviously, that's like the first thing people think of with alchemy, which we could go. I know you can go on tangents about all this stuff, but I've always found that to be really interesting. And I haven't delved too much deeper into it than that, but I've found it to be kind of interesting that it's attached to the marigold, that would give someone the ability to then understand this language, and then the foot. So I wonder, then is it just a sign of like being grounded? Is it all more symbolic than anything else? Because when we're grounded, when we feel that we're stable and strong and in our power, it's like all sorts
Yeah.
of great things come through. So I wonder if it has something to do with the grounding aspect of that.
I would 100% think that at least that part of it, the foot touching, you must definitely be grounded. And if you're not grounded, and this is a problem that I think most of society suffers at this point, you can't really receive anything anymore. You're just this bound up being because there's no flow anymore. You look, a friend of mine was just over here and he was talking about he's been hanging out in Hollywood, and there was this girl that he knows that he's been hanging out with, and she lives in a complex and it's got 70,000 units in it. I'm like, what?
That sounds horrible.
Horrifying. And it's one building. Now,
Oh my
you
God.
imagine, like these people that live in these areas, those buildings, the little bit of grass that they have is not grass to be walked on. They never touch anything but cement. They couldn't be more disconnected from the ground in and of itself and never touch it. They get into their apartments, which is God knows how high up, 70,000. I'm like, if that's three people in an apartment, which is got to be about the average, three or four, that's 210,000 people. Three of those buildings is South Dakota. Like, it's the whole state where I'm from. Like, what are you kidding me? And
Oh,
the temperature is always the same. The temperature, you can be sure that they have heated garages and all that. They never experience any outside element, and they never ground in any way, shape, or form. And uh, you just end up with this overcharge where you never can reflow again. Everything just stagnates from then on, and you just spin. You just end up in this spin. Like, that's the whole crazy, the symbol for crazy. You're spinning right in your
totally.
head. Your energy doesn't move the way it's supposed to. It spins. And
Yeah,
that's
the
where they end
hamster
up.
wheel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Literally the hamster. Oops, you find yourself spinning all these thoughts, and it creates all this strife, anxiety, and depression and projection and all this stuff. And it's just crazy because when I think about buildings like that and apartments in general, I think about the animals as well. I think about people who have animals and dogs in those places and cats and birds and whatever it might be. And I just go, oh my God, my heart seriously goes out to the animals more than the people sometimes, because the animals are even more of a prisoner because they've just been brought in and kind of against their will. And they're in this apartment building and they're looking out this window and they're like, okay, what the hell is going on here? I just can't even imagine how it would feel for them. And their owner might work
When
all day. Maybe they come home and take them for a walk for 5 minutes and then they, shove them back in. It's just like, oh, God, there should be a rule
quick
against that.
unload their bladder at best.
Yep. Yeah. It's sad. It really is. I don't know, man. It's crazy. I'm just grateful that I
And then
don't
you
have to
look at
live in
my
that
dogs, and
situation.
you've met my dogs. My
Mhm.
dogs are beasts. Like, they are absolute beasts. Tear's legs are like this big around. They're giant, just rippling muscle. And he's the most happy-go-lucky goofball. And like I said, Tor, he finally passed away when he was 16. Um, they live good long lives. You see these ones in these apartments, they're always just horribly fat. and very slack looking. They don't have like Tyr when he walks, it just ripples. His whole body just ripples. You're like, wow. And all my dogs look like that. And that's the way they're supposed to look. Like they run and play and grab things and chase and, you know, just make assholes out of themselves all day. Tyr's the best because like anything I say that's mine and I point at it, and I don't care if it's a log, he will go over and grab it, try and rip it up off the ground and take off with it. You'll see him grab just a big log, just like he's gonna take that damn thing. He's hilarious.
Nice. It's funny too, because you can always, at least I can pick up on when there's a, particularly when it's a dog, you can tell when the dog is pent up, you know, because they're just really extra crazy. It's like, yeah, your dogs are like a force in their own right, but it's like different. It's like there's like a groundedness with it, as opposed to a dog that is in an apartment or something, gets like maybe a little bit of exposure to outside. They're just all over the place. They're all anxious, you know, and they're all pent up. So they don't know what to do with their dog energy that naturally is supposed to be expressed by like going out and grabbing a log and running and, you know, jumping and doing all this stuff. And so it's just really interesting. And people, I think there's a thin line between using animals as a way to avoid or like filling a void. You know, I know a couple people who just constantly just like filling this void, but they don't allow their animals to express themselves in the way they're supposed to. Like they're literally just, you know, it's like, it's a weird thing. It's more of like a captor versus like wanting them to thrive, or like, you know, someone for like you guys. It's like, no, we have this land. We're going to treat them right. We're going to feed them right. We're going to do all this stuff. And it's just really, this becomes this bizarre control mechanism for people. I think like they need to have something to control so they'll get an animal. And it's really bizarre. It's so strange to me. But I understand.
It really is. And then
there's a lot of traumatized people.
Things on them. They force human things on them. It's weird. Like Tyr, he sounds super vicious when he's playing. Like you'd swear to God he's about to rip my arm off when he's got a stick or whatever, and I go over and take it from him. You'd swear he's going to kill me. And he is just not. He's just full of love, having a good time. And I'm aware of that about him. You know, it's these real fear of animals because people don't have control, and they don't. Like when you live on a farm, it's this weird, you understand a balance of it. And my farm is even different than most because Buddy's the only animal on my entire farm that's neutered or fixed. Like all my males have nuts. I have 5 male goats running around, all with nuts, all with horns. I don't dehorn my animals. I don't do any of those things. And I understand the safety issues. Yes, it's scary when the cow or the goat rips its horn over at you, and that thing can literally just spear you, just like, and so you learn to be competent. I understand that, you know, the thing is throughout history, these safety features that were put in, it very much reminds me of that Vonnegut movie that I occasionally talk about. I can't think of the guy's name, but it's just named Bergeron, Harrison Bergeron, where when you start putting all these safety measures into place, you take out, yes, some of the danger and some of the bad, but you also take out the greatness and the beauty. So like take now with this eye surgery thing. Now the eye surgeon's barely doing anything besides plugging your eye into a machine, and this little LASIK machine does all the work, and it's all, and yes, that's all going to be very satisfactory. You're never going to get the same quality of work that you got out of somebody that was like savant level that could do things that this machine cannot possibly do. The guy does the savants that could do things that nobody even imagined was possible. You also don't get the crap. The guy that goes in there and does a full hack job. You get this mid-grade mediocre all the time. And that's what it just seems like our entire society's turning into with all of this, and in every way possible. And that's what this feels like to me.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you on that. And I feel like we Sean Elger and I talked about this when I had him on because we talked about communitarianism and all the freaking negative things that come from it. And this, what you're explaining, is one of them because it's this policing, it's this enforcing the laws, it's enforcing the rules, and then your neighbors telling on you and all this shit. And it's just it's literally dumbing people down to the point too where it's taking away their personal power, even though they feel like it's a they're like establishing power by calling someone out or whatever. It's like no, it's actually the opposite, because you're totally just going into this herd mentality that, oh, like you're the savior. You're gonna save somebody by ratting your neighbor out who's using their hose during a California drought. You know what I mean? I mean, that was the stuff that when I remember hearing that. Mario's parents told us about that because they live in Fresno. So this was like 3-4 years ago when the drought was going on. And he told Mario, like, yeah, they sent out letters saying, hey, if you see your neighbors using their hoses during this time and this time, you can report it and we'll pay you $300 per report. That was what was going on in the community of Fresno. And I don't know how many other cities. Yeah, right. And that was a while back. And it blew our minds just thinking like, oh my God, like they're literally incentivizing each other to rat each other out. And it's like, wow, dude.
I've heard a lot of bad things about Fresno, and I've never experienced many good things when I've been in Fresno. It's a miserable place. That takes the cake.
Isn't that nuts? I know. God, it's a nutty place. I mean, God, when we go back too, we're always just like, holy crap, man. I mean, it is, you are just in the middle of the desert and they just have trucked in all the irrigation and they have all, Fresno State's huge for agriculture, as you know. And it's a nutty place because we've been there before. And, in the early morning, Mario's dad was taking us to the airport one time. And we were like looking at the horizon, the sun was rising and it was so smoggy, like incredibly smoggy. And Mario goes, it looks like India, like when he was in India, which is really bad with pollution and all that stuff.
Right.
But there's so much spraying going and then you have the dirt and everything else. And yeah, it's an interesting place. I mean, I'll say Mario came out of that. So that's awesome. So there's some good stuff and his family's incredible, but it's so funny like that. Yeah, it kind of does get that name of like the armpit, of either California or the country or whatever it is. I don't know. I always think of Gary, Indiana as the armpit, but that's neither here nor there.
Right.
But
right.
Because I can remember driving through that when I was a little girl coming from like our aunt and uncle lived in Ohio. We're driving through Gary and I was like, oh, it smells like French fries. And my dad's like, what? French fries? It smells like shit. We're in Gary, Indiana. Just like, I just think of that place and I can see it in my mind's eye of how it feels. Like it feels how it looks and it looks how it feels. It's really strange place down over there in the Midwest.
Nice. I've always kind of thought Pierre, South Dakota was where if God was ever going to give the world an enema, that's where the hose would go, was Pierre, South Dakota.
Oh man, that's awesome. Nice. Wow.
Yeah, that's roughest town. I think it's one of the rougher towns I've ever been in. That's just a miserable place. Just wow.
Oh, here's the snow again.
Yeah, it's snowing good now. Like that's real decent snow. It's accumulating.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, we had snow today too. Huge flakes, the hugest we've had, like kind of all winter actually. So that's been an interesting thing. I don't know how
4 days ago we had these flakes that were stacking up on top of each other and they were coming down in like snow clumps.
Whoa.
Never seen it before. And I'm from the Midwest. I'm from where it snows half the year and I've never seen anything like that. It was like snow clumps.
Wow. Yeah, same. I know, it's interesting and it changes really fast out here. And so it's been wild to watch the weather patterns, but it's changing. So I think we might be getting snow as well, but we'll see.
Oof,
One other thing I wanted to ask you before we kind of move on, because I really want to talk to you about the 3 minds that you brought up during your last interview with James.
I downloaded, I figured out how to download it onto my computer just for this.
Oh, sweet. Good. I'm so glad, because I've been totally thinking about it since you brought it up. But one last thing, because you work with cows and all that stuff. Have you ever heard of cooling?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, calling the cows. Dude,
Yes.
I 100% think that that's part of why all the animals like me better than everybody else, because I sing to them.
Yes. Hell
I
yeah.
always sing to my animals.
That's awesome. They totally resonate with it. There's something to it. And for anyone out there who's never heard of it, it's basically a Scandinavian or Swedish herd call. And so you can literally go out and you're using your voice to call in your herd. And it's beautiful. And I go out to the mountain and I do it because I feel like I have this thing in me to just want to do it. And I will do it every once in a while, and I will get calls back from animals. Like this morning, I got a call back from something. It was a bird or whatever, but the turkeys.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll go out and I'll just on our property and I'll do a couple just calls out and the turkeys come back and I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. So I just really wanted to ask you about that. And I have a deep resonance with it. I swear I get like teary eyed when I hear people do it because I have a feeling like my ancestors did it. And I think probably throughout multiple cultures, there's some sort of, herd call like this. But I just have a deep resonance with the Scandinavian herd call. And it's something special. And I know that there's like you can go to festivals in Sweden where they'll actually like have like women who are doing the cooling and you can just sit and listen and they'll teach you how to do it. And there's different ways to move your mouth to make the different sounds. And yeah, it's beautiful. So I had a feeling that that was one of your things, but I had to ask.
I don't know how to do that, but I sing Lola to the cows.
Nice.
And because Lola's the head cow, so if I start singing Lola, you could see it. If I start singing Lola, you'll see Lola's ears just perk up and she'll look over and then when I'm milking Sunshine, I sing You Are My Sunshine to her. But
Aw, nice. Yeah, they like to be sung to.
Yeah,
I know.
And so do all the animals.
Yep. I'm always making up songs for our cat. Like I've got multiple greatest hits I'm singing. So they love it. They respond to it. But yeah, Sunseed.
100%.
She yeah.
Mike, I know Miker.
Yeah, she has a beautiful song where she is using these calls in a lot of her music, and it's amazing. So yeah, it's great stuff. And then High Lung, she's not doing it necessarily, but she's kind of in the same vein. Maria from High Lung is kind of playing with some of that stuff too, which is one of the reasons why I think I resonate with the music so much too. But with that said, do you want to get into the mind stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, so if you want to just like kind of do a little rundown of what the 3 minds are to you, so that we can kind of give people who may have didn't hear you say that before in your other interview a little like synopsis of it.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Let me pull this up.
Cool. Thanks for doing that, man. That's awesome because I've really been thinking about this a lot. Okay. And I even kind of took some time to like in my own way figure out like what elements might be attached to these, and I have a couple of thoughts on the salt mind and everything else that I've been wanting to pick your brain about too.
Fantastic. So this was Odin's gift to me, and as you can see that each one of these individual trees on the left is its own tree. Now this is the tree set up in basically the way Heathen set it up. Hi Sage. And this is the way our tree of life is set up. What Odin told me though was I'm 3 minds, not 1. and I had to figure it out from there. That's the entirety of what I was given. So from there, I work at the way I work on things, and the way I figure things out is through alchemy. And then, because it's got to actually work in nature before it has any meaning. And then I start matching that to everything else, and in this instance, matching it back to the heathen stories. So when I'm looking at this as an alchemist, this whole thing, then the three minds, is one plant, one person, one whatever. And as an alchemist, let's make this into a plant, because that's easiest to talk about. As an alchemist, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break these three pieces apart. Burp, burp, burp. And with this, I'm going to first take the oil, or this is going to be, when I first start, this is going to be oil, and this is going to be your salt, and then this is going to be your carbon. This middle tree is going to be your carbon. And we're going to try and purify these top and bottom trees. And we can only do that by sacrificing this middle tree, the pieces of the middle tree, which is going to have the negative side of Mercury right now. And with that negative side to Mercury, that's going to be the things that belong to this earth. That's why it's Mother Earth, because that's the pieces that are making your carbon body. So the very center here is going to be carbon. Carbon's the super weird one. Up here is going to be, this is going to be your water. And then this is going to be your cellular material, your ash. And so you're going to, through the alchemical process, burn those three things out and separate out these two. Then this is going to end up becoming your oil tree, because once we've got this separated out, this is going to become your sulfur. And the sulfur is where the life is. This is the energy. And then this becomes your oil tree, and this is the actual true feminine. And then this becomes the salt tree still. This stays as the salt tree. These two want to ride together before this entire process. And so that's part of why that really gets confusing in a lot of the mythologies, because the sulfur sits inside of the oil and rides inside the oil. And even when I put it through the alchemical process, I almost never take the sulfur out of the oil. I just leave the sulfur in the oil, put in the salt, and then the sulfur and the salt marry inside of the oil. There's just no reason for me to take the oil, the sulfur out of the oil, or the life. But when you're doing the plant extractions, especially when you really start getting down into it, when you do fresh frozen, which is really the only way to do a live plant, so that way you're freezing up the water and the fats and the lipids, and then you're pouring through a solvent that doesn't bond with water. So the fats, lipids, and water will stay frozen in there, and the solvent will pour through, grab onto the oil, and pull it out. When that happens, especially if it's a green plant, the oil in that will have this almost neon life color. And that neon life color, if you wait till the plant dries, it depletes down into like a golden yellow, distinctly darker yellow. And then as the plant ages, it starts turning into a red, and then it turns into a black. And you can separate that out. That's when you really separate out that sulfur component, when that life part is dead. But it doesn't have the efficacy at all at that point. So anyways, after you've done this separation with this, you've distinctly got, this is going to be your high mind. And your high mind is going to be like your contractor. That's where your higher ideas, your new higher thinking is. New thoughts come from this area. This is what we would call the God side. And the downside to the God side is your will is this area. This is your will area. And so they don't have free will. That's why you hear like angels don't have free will and all that. That's because these etheric beings don't. That's why Odin was different than all the other gods. Well, this is opposed to your salt or your Titan side. And your Titan side has all kinds of power. That's where your wisdom and your power comes from, but it doesn't have higher thinking. It doesn't have access to that. Well, we are actually all three of these things put together, bound into one, just like Odin was. And each one is very representative. It's super interesting when you, just as a personal note, when you start figuring out that you have different minds, like, and it's really easy to see examples throughout situations in life where if I had asked you if you're going to react to a certain situation, like as a little kid, when for no apparent reason a good looking girl would walk by and you'd punch your best friend and he'd punch you, and you're all of a sudden in this brawl, and then the girl's gone and you don't fight with each other no more. You're like, why were we even fighting? I don't know. It's all over. And that's because one of your minds took over and you didn't consciously think of that. Your high mind didn't realize what's going on. Your ego that's living this out did not realize what's going on. Another mind entirely, your salt mind, that is your dense mind, that your more root, that took over. It said, I'm doing what I'm going to do. When I was in prison in the hole, some of the guys would go on a water strike. And it was super interesting because when they would break at the end of the water strike, it would be because they were getting ready to go pee, and they would be standing over the toilet and they would visually see that water in the toilet, and then they would just stick their face in it and start slurping down. If you asked that guy a minute before that, would you drink water out of the toilet there? Hell no. Hell no. But that mind and this ego that was living out the thing, it had decided to do this so it could get some kind of concessions from the prison. But that mind, that root mind, said, no, I need water right now.
Right.
And you and I'm taking it.
Yeah.
Like
I don't care what the source is. It's
yes, exactly. And the worst part about that story is there's also a faucet attached. So literally in 2 inches, you could have just turned on a faucet and drank faucet water, not toilet water. So in their root mind's like, don't care. You've fucked up too long. I'm taking over. And all the time we've been in situations where our ego, because of the situation, does what it does, even though if you would have asked our higher mind, we have all these different higher thoughts and ways of living and thinking that we talk about, but very seldomly when you meet a person do you see them living that out. And that's because their ego mind's not down with this plan. Their ego mind's like, no, I like living this way, I like doing things this way. And yeah, my higher mind thinks all these, really high cool things, but it's not how we're living. It's not panning out. And so that's your carbon, your water, and your cellular material. And that's the neutral zone. That's between. That's why in a lot of old shows, they used to show you with your head, and then you had an angel on one side and a devil on the other. Well, they've just demonized this salt side. It's funny to me that this is your villi mind, and it's vile. If you read it in English, it just says vile.
Yes.
And they've really heavily demonized this side of things. And even in the occult world, it's all about that you need to take control of this side. And that's not the way it works in my world. These two things are actually the broken halves of the masculine, and they're both the same. And they're polarized against each other. And the feminine comes in and heals the broken masculine, and the three things coagulate through the alchemical marriage into the philosopher's stone, or into the great work of a person to make a god. But again, it's even more than a god, because we have Titan also. The Titans don't have higher thinking. The gods don't have willpower. We have both, and we're just a dirty version of it. And the thing about that is, then, because it's I hit stop sharing, I think, because they're actually the same thing. When they're oppositional, they're going like this. which is very opposing. But the thing is it's actually going the same direction. And you just need to marry them back together, take away that polarity. And that's what the feminine side is doing, just like in the creation story, where in the creation you start out with Muspelheim, or the land of fire, or the feminine side of the masculine, or you have Niflheim, the structured, cold, unmoving masculine side of the masculine. And Gunungagap pulls the two together, and where she does, that's where life happens. And so it's only through that feminine that the two masculine sides will end up rectifying and becoming one again. Anyways.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you, Ben, for running through that.
You bet.
One of the things that I thought about with the salt mind, and I was like, you described it as, sometimes they'll call it the epigenetic mind, like the epigenetic memory or whatever. And what that made me think of was like, well, yeah, salt's a crystal, and crystals hold information. So it just totally, like, that was where one of my big mind swirls went to, actually. It was because, well, yeah, that makes total sense. It's like, if you put intention into a crystal, or you whatever, same thing like with water, but with crystals, I feel like there's something deeper even when it comes to holding things like that. And so that was one of the things I just wanted to kind of like put out for you, of like, see what you think about that.
So with water, that's such a great example. Water in itself doesn't hold memory. And that's a real big misconception that everybody's having with that whole movement. If you read Emoto's works, when he first started doing these experiments, he was going around and taking just water from different spots and then crystallizing it. And it made different formations. Well, when he wanted to start putting his own information into it, the first thing he did was distill the water. And so this removed the memory of the water. And he even says in his book, distilled water produces a 6-sided crystal. Now, at that point, the water's receptive to whatever signal is going on. So the water is acting as mercury. That's the earth level. That's the earth level mercury. And it's catching whatever vibration is hitting it. Now, also, just like mercury, what it's doing is when the salt crystal, because salts are crystals, when the salt crystal is hard and closed, you can't read information in it. You can't put information in it. But as soon as that water hits that crystal and turns it into a solution, now that signal goes through the water into the crystal, or from the crystal, it gets expressed back out through the water. And so when he started flash freezing, as he's putting in signal, what you're seeing is signal that water won't really remember. You can't take that water and then refreeze it again and make that happen again without refreshing that signal into it. But if you do it enough to override into the salt crystals that it has, now it will naturally just start having that formation, just like it did in the waters that he went around and collected. So I have a whole thing. This is part of why I want to get an electron microscope, because I have this whole thing where some of the salts are more complicated than others. Okay. So some of them have a much more complex structure, much harder to open. And those harder to open ones, I'm going to save till later. I'm going to find the one that's the least structured, the easiest to open, and the easiest to overwrite. And the idea then is to make a solution with just that salt and blast it with some kind of a signal, with some kind of a vibration. And I would like that vibration to be a message. Because cymatically, once we get this down, we can make an entire alphabet. Because if I just blast that water with the sound, and then I figure out what that is cymatically with the crystal, I can start building a library of sounds, and each one will make its own little vibration. Now, after we get that library made, then or language made, then let's say I want to put in, hey, Michelle. And I sit there and I yell, I put that vibration into this solution of water with salt. And I do it for a duration that is going to take some experimenting, but to where it overrides the information that's in that salt, where this message I just implanted becomes the only message in the salt now. And then I can dry up the water, take those salt crystals, send them to you. You can put them back in, just pour some distilled water on top of it. It has to be distilled so it doesn't have other crystals in it, other minerals. And then put that drop and flash freeze it and crystallize it and be able to read that message I implanted into it.
Whoa, dude. I love this.
Right.
This is awesome.
Right.
Holy crap. Now, the thing that you said when you're like, you can put an alphabet into this. I thought about doing this with the runes. Like actually doing this with,
that's somehow a vibration. It is.
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be. Oh my goodness. Whoa. This is blowing my mind a little bit. I love this. I knew if I brought this one to the table, you would have some really good stuff to bring in with the salts.
Absolutely.
I never.
Well, and then even.
Go ahead,
please.
Well, I'm really glad you clarified the water thing for me, because I think that what's the guy's name again?
Emoto?
Was like, yes. So you're totally right that the first thing was just like, okay, there's just messages in water. That was like the kind of like the phrase that everybody was pinging. So I appreciate you clarifying that and then explaining it this way. So you probably just broke open a couple layers for a lot of people, because I think a lot of people just automatically, oh, the messages are in the water. Okay, blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you have to further look at his results and his findings. And it's like, oh, then it starts becoming clear. The salt really had the message. The water's just this transition. It's mercury. It's taking the message and it's either giving it or taking it, one or the other. The mercury is always neutral. And then further, when we start getting an understanding of these salts and what's written in them, each salt then consecutively is going to become more complex and harder to open. Well, now we're starting to talk about our epigenetic and ancestral memories. And when you look at, like, when Odin went through the Odin test, the first thing that he did was he had to open up his high mind. And then when he did that, he threw his eye down the well. And that goes down because the high salt or the high oil's job is to open up the lowest salt. The two in the middle, they pair off. So the ones closest to the middle there, they go, these two pair off, then these pair off, then these pair off. So to open up them ancestral memories that he wanted to open up to really start understanding the world, he threw that high mind down the well and opened up them epigenetic memories where you just have 1,000 generations of humans that have lived this life, and you can remember all of it. It's written into you. And to have access to that, imagine how different you see the world.
Oh my God. Yeah. Wow. Man. So I wonder too, now it's making me think about, like, when we cry, like what is, if we could take our tears and freeze them, would the tears be, would they hold the emotions and the thoughts and the sadness or whatever, or the happiness that you were feeling while you were crying? And I imagine that it probably would.
100%. I actually have, and not only that, but your blood shows it also. I actually have a guest that's getting ready to come on the show. Oh, no, his book's back over here.
Well, this is cool too, because if we get to the talking about, like, terrain theory, germ theory, German new medicine, holographic blood is what comes to mind too with this, because it works in that same way, how the blood is actually storing these memories.
So this guy actually he worked on Emoto and was Emoto's doctor, and he's taken all of these thoughts, and you can see where he's done things before and after in the blood and the way your whole body system works. His name's Darren Weissman. He took this and actually took that thought process and started actually implementing it. Live blood cell analysis. 32-year-old woman with symptoms, blah, blah. And this is after working and whatnot, where here her cells were all bound up and here they're more free and open. And
yeah, there's something very interesting about that. And the whole, isn't it called like a dark field microscope or something like that, where you can actually.
Yeah, that dark field, I always can't say that word. Oh.
Yeah, it's an intriguing place. I'll look forward to that show because. So does he reference Harvey Bigelsen at all? The guy who is kind of like I don't know if he's the founder of holographic blood, but he kind of like was a pioneer in figuring this stuff out. He wasn't like the first guy, but so I have his book right here because I just didn't know if we were going to like get to this stuff, but this is the holographic blood, a new dimension in medicine. And so taking that same concept of being able to look at the cells before and after inside the blood and being able to see things like emotional, like emotional hangups and stuff, like they show up as almost like a guarded cell that's bigger than all the other blood cells. And
right. Instead of being free and open like he was showing here. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it crystallizes as it gets harder. So as it gets older. So if it's like a deep seated emotion that has never really been attended to or concentrated on, he literally has photos in here where like the emotional bound of whatever it is all crystallized together. And it's really interesting, like just seeing these photos and then kind of like going along this. It's like how it shows the body, or just like shows how we can like store things that we're not even aware of. And then once we just like hit one nerve, all these things just kind of start to break apart. And that our blood holds memory, just like we hold this memory.
Right.
And it's very intriguing to me. I'm like reading this book on and off. I feel like when I started learning about it, though, it really resonated. And actually Rachel was the one to bring it to my attention because she brought it up on Spiders one time months ago. And she just kind of like put it out there. It's like
brilliant stuff.
It's really cool. And I know Chance has interviewed Harvey's sons, because Harvey died, I think, in 2007. But his sons have carried on his tradition of using this method. And he totally got just reamed, man. I mean, he had to move to Mexico and stuff because he was just attacked in the States when he was doing this stuff with people, and it was healing like terminal illnesses that people weren't able to touch for their whole lives, or they would have like really serious, severe cases of cancers and things where all the Western doctors weren't able to figure it out. And he then started adding like stem cell therapy to this, in which he had access to in Mexico more easily than in the States.
Right.
But they totally just attacked him. And so if anybody's interested, Chance did the interview maybe like 3 months ago, I think, with those guys. And it's an intriguing thing to think about. Yeah. And they're more on the terrain theory. It's more of a terrain theory way of looking at things, which makes sense to me with it. But yeah, he's all into Rudolf Steiner too. And so thinking about like the three minds, Rudolf Steiner has the theory of 4 bodies. And he kind of goes off of that in the holographic blood book. But basically, like,
hold on, I'll show you.
Yeah.
Share screen. Where did it go? Window. Oh, I cut it out. Damn it. I already closed it. When you look at each of the 3, see how when I say 3, it's a diamond, and a diamond. Each diamond's 4. So that's where things get. So when he says, right. So that's why it's 3, because that's how you get your 12. Like when you say 12 cell salts, It's 3 levels. Each of the levels has 4 salts on it, and then it's 3 times 4 is 12, and you get 12 cell salts. Because one level is 4 different salts. This level's 4 different salts. And even when you look at it, when you look at the cellular salts, you can see that they're all just variations. That there's always 4 variations of the same salt. One will be potassium, potassium, sulfur, potassium, and it'll be just variations, and you can tell that's why it's 4. And the same thing when you look at like a cannabis plant, it's THCA, THCB, and so it's just 4 variations or different structurings of the same thing. And that's where you get in your 4. So when you sing 4 body, that's because in the body area, then that mind has 4 slots.
Cool. Whoa, that's awesome. Because this starts to make me think about the phrase all is mind, and then when I apply that to our health, and then, practices like holographic blood and German new medicine are very much invested and steeped in that it's like your mind basically is like in control of your cells. And so just like we were saying in the beginning, if you're not in control of your mind and you're just spinning your thoughts and you're not grounded, how is that going to show up in your body? Probably not in a very good way. And until we can kind of like just like gather our thoughts and be able to develop an emotional intelligence that's grounded so that we don't allow our emotions to run our life, but we're not disconnected from them. I think that is one of the major keys to just being a solid person, being able to move through life in a graceful way and be able to problem solve and have critical thought. And that's another thing that society has seemed it's like moving away from. And you always hear the first thing is like, oh, mental health, it's so important. It's like, well, yes, it is, but it's like, let's not forget about the emotional health of people and being able to like have a balance between it. Because I can even think of myself when I was, in a younger time, emotionally not as developed. And, the littlest thing would maybe make me really emotional, or I would cry or whatever. And crying's not bad. I'm not trying to say that. But it's like you need to know like when's the right time to really feel these emotions, or are you just being overly emotional because you haven't quite yet figured out how to rein your emotions in a healthy way so that they're more productive. Just like having productive thought or having a productive ego versus thinking like, no, get rid of the ego or whatever. It's like, no. It has to be productive. It's like, are you having a productive relationship with these systems in our body that are here to allow us to grow and heal and all these things, that I think we're just meant to figure out while we're in this realm here,
Absolutely. Well, and the thing is like you were just saying, it is the thing we are figuring out is how to put these two sides together. So that doesn't include overriding one of the sides. And that's where you end up with a real midlife crisis with a lot of people, is where no, your emotions should not control your decisions, but at the same time, they somewhat should. So you've got to usually the mind is what you want to lead. But on the same token, when the mind starts making a bunch of decisions that don't match the emotion, and you see this in today's society a lot because we're such a money-driven society where people will do things because they're good money and then absolutely hate it. And then all of a sudden one day, 15 years down the road, they just have a full-on mental breakdown and they're neurotic, shits that have to move to India and join a circus or something because they don't have any idea what to do with themselves because they've been beating that one side down for the whole time. And that's where I'm super at peace. Like my life, it makes sense to me mentally and I'm happy living it. Like it's a both thing.
Yeah. And that's when you are on the right track and you've developed yourself enough to be able to appreciate the fact that you've developed it. I think that kind of gets lost too, that, just having the ability to formulate these thoughts about ourselves and be able to meander all the things that are going on, you need to have that groundedness. And if you don't, oh man, you are just like you're gonna get ground up in the meat grinder, man. I mean, seriously,
Oh, 100%.
It's incredible. And that's what we're kind of witnessing as well, too, in my opinion, is just the meat grinder is on highest highest setting here going.
Well, because most people haven't lived the life that they're espousing.
Right.
And until you root something, it's just airy fairy. Until you root it, it may have been a good idea, but who cares, because you didn't go live it. And everybody's so busy trying to wake everybody else up and drag them along because they're so scared to do it on their own, that they aren't living the life that they're telling other people is such a good idea. And maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's not. You find out when you get there. Like one of the things that I'm not very for, that a lot of people are kind of surprised, is I'm not really a communitarian or really communist is what that is. I don't want to live in a commune. Well, in my experience, when you live in most people that want to live in a commune, it's not because they want to do all the work. They have this idea of living this life where nobody tells them what to do, but they don't do anything. They aren't productive humans. And, that's the whole anarchy thing that they've tried to push, where like the 70s rock, 60s and 70s rock and punk rock anarchy, where there's no self-responsibility to it. Where a true anarchist, I realize that just because there's no overlord, that doesn't mean I'm not subject to consequences. The laws of cause and effect still apply. And so if I go around pissing all my neighbors off, they're going to get together and piss on me. And if I don't get up in the morning and go milk the cow, there isn't going to be milk in the fridge at night. I'm not going to have any. And then if I do that a few times, the cow is going to dry up and no longer produce milk. And now I'm going to have to wait until the cow calves again, which is going to take however long. All of these things are just facts of life. And in this way that I live, there's no denying that. It doesn't matter if somebody told me or not. It's just the way it is. And so I have to form myself around that way. And that's what anarchy truly brings you to, is just, I just want to live my way. But that doesn't mean I want to go burn down my neighbor's house and go piss in the salad at the restaurant. And, that's all just nonsense. Like, if it's true anarchy, then that guy should be able to punch me right in the head for doing it. Is, consequences. I'm not free of consequences still. And I'm honestly on the train and germ theory, I'm really on a very 50-50 with it. And I feel like we've really come to a point where people are trying to take one side or the other, because I feel like ether theory and particle theory are on the same two polar opposites, where you're both like half wrong, half right. So with terrain theory, of course, your body is this perfect system that runs just amazing, and it has components that need to be added into it, because we're not self-enclosed system, so we have to add things to it. And depending on what we add into the system, it does change the way the system operates, and it changes it. And we are a microevolution machine. It's amazing how we can microevolve. Now, that microevolution is happening because of things we eat, because of things we drink, because of things we breathe, because of things we touch. Do you know that Europeans they were about the holy anointing oil. So when they took cannabis, they rubbed it on their skin to get their high, because things will soak and absorb right through that bugger real nice. Especially you mix a little DMSO in there, it's going to shoot right in there. You won't even know what hit you. And so everything that you touch, walk by, breathe, go, consume in any way, that has DNA markers, that has its own little genetics to it. And when your body takes that in, that your body adjusts to that. Now, some of those things we've labeled as germs. Some of those things science has labeled as viruses. Some of those things they've labeled as whatever. But all of these things are genetic, are things that are just coming into you from the outside. So now back to terrain. On depending on your terrain, that depends on how your body receives these things that are coming in. And so there are things that your body literally programs on the way in. If your body's a cesspool, then that's going to be one thing. If your body's a wonderful, Disneyland, then it's going to be another thing. Now, one of the things that is going to be real hard for people to grasp is what we're considering viruses and germs or parasites. So you can basically boil all that down to parasites. They're all parasitic things. And the problem is that parasitic things, when you start looking at your garden, they only live in a certain condition. So you look at weeds and things like that out in your garden. If your soil is between 5.5 and 6.5, which is where most of your vegetables and fruits that we consume most, not all, like your berries and things like that, like a highly acidic environment. But most of them, if your soil is in that area and your biome matches that, you've got a nice bacterial fungal ratio. Anything that comes in doesn't want to live there. Weeds don't want to live in your soil, in your 5.5 to 6.5. It starts spiking up a bit and you start getting some acidity. All of a sudden you start getting some weeds in there that enjoy that acidic soil. And what they're going to do is they're going to eat the components down that make that soil acidic. So what's making that soil acidic is going to be hydrogenated things that come, because that's what makes things acidic. The pH means potential of hydrogen. Things with a lot of hydrogen are acidics. Things with no hydrogen in them are base. And so it's going to start eating up that hydrogenated stuff. And that's going to make your soil more base, and it's going to start moving more toward the base side again. And that's actually restoring and fixing your soil system. And so the root problem is that you've got some kind of a mineral imbalance, which is causing you to become more acidic. Now, you take that same as above, so below, you take that same principle and you apply it to the body, into things coming into the body. If your body is this freaking cesspool, what are these predators eating? They're eating cesspool things. They say, why do people with a good terrain not get sick? Because a good terrain, just like a good garden, those things aren't trying to eat that. That's not where they thrive. They thrive in the cesspool. So the cesspool, they're like, open season, boys.
Party.
Yeah. So the terrain is very important. Your terrain is deciding how it interacts with the outside world. But where I feel like the terrain theory people are making a severe mistake is that then they're pretending like we're some self-isolated system that isn't living in symbiosis with the rest of the world. That part of the reason you have cancer is because you took in something that was foreign to your body that your system didn't like, and you took it into such excess that your system programmed itself new cells around that shit you keep jamming in here. And now those cells are cancer cells because they're different than your other cells. And they're like, yeah, but this is the shit we're working with, guys. This is what we got, and your body will do that over and over again. And part of the reason cancer is so prevalent right now is because in the last 50 years, none of the food we eat now made in the last 50 years matches the whole rest of our fucking history. We haven't had a chance to microevolve to this crap that they're throwing at us yet. Promise in 100 years, 200 years, them kids could freaking probably eat Twinkies, and they're probably going to be like some super cell source for them or something, and their body won't care. because that we're microevolution machines. We are the most amazing thing on this planet. There is not a condition in this planet that our bodies won't figure out how to function in.
Dude, right on. Yeah, because we adapt. Yeah, because we're built to adapt, you know? And
Yes.
this is the I'm so glad we're talking about this. And I just had to say too that I was so grateful to you when what was it last year? No, 2 years ago when all the freaking scandemic stuff was going on that you were the one that kind of were like, "Hey, wait a second before we all just abandon all this other stuff. Let's like really talk about it." And I was really
Yeah.
just glad that you did that and kind of brought it in because, yeah, I mean, people just jumped on board right away. And that happens with a lot of stuff. And they're not really like looking
100%.
at it, yeah, as a whole holistic system, which is what is being eliminated with allopathic medicine and germ theory, in my opinion, in certain ways, because
Yep.
it's not about like allowing the symptoms to come through and them just be. It's about suppressing them, which then in turn makes everything worse because it's not about the suppression of it. It's about nurturing it almost and like honoring it. Like, oh shit, my stomach hurts. Well, instead of taking Tums and all this crap, it's like, well, maybe like sit and think about, well, what did you eat today? What didn't you eat? Have you had water? What's going on? Did you have a weird conversation with someone that made you feel crappy? Are you having a hard time digesting something that you're dealing with, whether it be emotional or spiritual or physical, And so anyway, I really wanted to just, tell you that I was very grateful when you did that. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have a bit of this conversation with you. Because it's really important to just not like throw all your eggs into one basket too, because I am with you in the fact that I feel like it's a bit of all of these things, and I can't
Right.
100% say that it's one of them, but if I had to pick one, I do resonate the most with German New Medicine, and I
Yep.
find that it helps me when I'm going through something, whether I'm not feeling right or whatever. Pretty much always when I refer to what German New Medicine would look at that ailment, what would that be showing up as in my body? It almost is always spot on. And I'm usually able to be like, "Welp, okay, that makes sense." And then it literally
Right.
helps me to process it. And I find that I'm able to just do all sorts of internal work that then in turn I come to all these other epiphanies because of it. And so anyway, I
Right.
really wanted to get to that point because even in the recent times, like I hardly get sick ever,
Yep.
I haven't had a cold in a long time or whatever. And it was about 3 weeks ago where I started coming down with something, right? And I was like, well, it's coming on. I can tell, I can feel it, whatever. We're just gonna ride it out. And we've been having issues with one of our neighbors, and we had issues with them all summer long. And I had a really hard time forgiving her for some of the stuff that they were doing, right? I just had a really hard time with it. And shout out to Grounded Extracts. I was taking Best Earth, right? And I was taking the Best Earth and it's really helping me with all this stuff. And I had this whole thing where I was like, you know what? I haven't forgiven that neighbor. I haven't even forgiven her yet. I need to forgive her so I can move on and do all this stuff. And it was like clockwork. And then I had this whole detox come through. And it was incredible.
Nice.
And I had other symptoms like I got a fever blister on my lip, which I hadn't had in a really long time. And typically, like in German New Medicine, a fever blister or anything having to do with the skin is usually a separation conflict. So it's either you want to be separated from somebody. Oh, what's up, Key? You want to be
Yeah, she
separated.
apparently just see her look right at the camera.
Oh, yeah.
I'm matcha.
She's like, can I come in there? So it's usually a separation conflict, right? So it's like you either want to be separated from somebody or you're being separated from someone or something against your will. And I wanted to
Mm.
be separated from this woman. And it came through on with this fever blister. And the same thing is the case for like eczema and things like that. And I was talking to a buddy of mine and I was telling him about this with the eczema being a separation anxiety. And it typically will have something to do with a separation from like a parent. You know, maybe you were like separated from a parent for whatever reason, whether they moved away, they went to jail, they got divorced, whatever. And he was like, wait, say it again. And I told him, and he goes, no shit. He goes, I had childhood eczema so bad, and it happened right after my parents got divorced. And I was like, well, all right. I was like, you know, just something to think about. I was like, I'm not saying that this is the only thing that would cause eczema, but if you're looking at it from a German new medicine perspective, that's exactly what it is. And I've talked to other people that have had that same instance where even like they had childhood eczema, there was a separation, but they didn't know that was the deal. And maybe
Right.
the eczema came back later in their life. And then it was
Huh.
because they had been reconnected with a person that they were separated from that caused a conflict. And the eczema came back when they got back in contact with this person. And it's kind of uncanny. And I've seen it a few times, and I've seen it personally with my own self. And especially with the cold, with the fever blisters and the skin stuff being separation. The first time I ever got a fever blister was when it was my junior year of high school. And I remember it so distinctly because it was a really emotional time for me because my dad was in jail and he had like work release, right? And I was the one that was like picking him up. So like before school, I would wake up and I would drive to pick him up and I'd take him to work and I would drive him back to jail after he was done with work. And I just started totally like breaking out in these horrible fever blisters and it was just like crazy. And now when I look back at it, I was like, well, I was being separated from my dad. Like, and then I was watching my dad go through this whole situation. And so we were being separated almost like in this weird way that really was like very strong for me. And so when I think about stuff like this, it just has helped me connect so many dots, even about my own self. And I've seen it happen for other people. And it's just pretty incredible. And so it really gets my juices going when I think about German new medicine and some of the codes that have been cracked in my own personal life and then people that I know as well.
It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
Absolutely amazing.
It's really great. And our buddy Mark, actually, he wrote a book and it's called Hammer because of the guy who actually came up with German new medicine. But this is his book. It's a critical look at healthcare. And he does a good job of kind of like going through like how does like conventional medicine deal with some of this stuff? And then how does German new medicine deal with it? And like makes the comparison as to where these breaks happen and why it is the way that it is. And so one of his things that he's always said is just nature doesn't make mistakes. And so when something happens to you, it's like it's for a reason. And it's either to allow you to resolve it so you can, you know, become a better person, or you can, you know, separate yourself from something that you want to be separated from or whatever. And I mean, it's pretty interesting too, because they go into allergies and how that's like can be related to possibly a trauma that happened while you were maybe like, say you were like attacked by a dog or something like that. Right. And actually I have something written down that if you don't mind, if I just read it, cause it kind of helps to like put into perspective of like what something even might.
Please do.
Okay. So do I still have it on this page? I hope I do. I might not have it. Let me see.
If you don't, I'm gonna go pee quick while you find it.
Okay, yeah, you should go pee and I'll just
I'll
just
do that. Pull that up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so anybody out there too, if you haven't looked into German new medicine, I bet a lot of people in this community have, but it's really freaking interesting and I find it to be really helpful and it's helped me a lot with things that I've dealt with. And so there is something, I do have it here. That's awesome. We didn't print it, so that's okay. But yeah, I mean, it really gives explanations on even things like reoccurring symptoms that you might have. So if something always constantly returns, it's usually a sign of certain things that it's like a certain conflict that hasn't yet been resolved. So you might go for 6 months and you feeling fine or whatever, but you have something that reoccurs, maybe every 6 months or something. And it's like, what is this thing? And it could be something that is just like an unresolved trauma within you, that you haven't yet resolved. So I'm really, just fascinated by this.
What
for
does
sure.
it say about allergies for cats?
Okay, yes, that's I will get that, because I do have one that is just for dogs, but it would be basically like any animal or any allergy that you have. Okay, so here we go. Okay, I've got it. Okay. So this is a really good example. So here's the example. A boy has a scary experience with the neighbor's dog and suffers a territorial fear conflict, putting him into an asthma constellation. So basically like an asthma attack. Provided the conflict is not resolved, he will now be allergic to that dog or any similar looking dog as a trigger for an asthma attack. Let's take the scenario that one day the boy is outside in the garden and he is eating a peanut cookie. If he sees at this very moment the neighbor's dog that initially was the attacker, the taste of the peanuts is associated with the dog and will instantly be added as an extended track or a reoccurring issue anytime he encounters the dog. And so from now on, the boy will always now also be allergic to that dog and the peanut cookie. And then if on top of it, this is another example, his father is doing a paint job while he encounters the dog, the boy will from now on also be allergic to that particular fume. This way, over time, more and more tracks are added to the conflict and programmed into the conflict-related brain relay, and in this case, into the control center of the bronchial muscles.
Huh.
Yeah, isn't it fascinating? I'm just like, whoa. And I love thinking about it. It trips me out. And I'm like, when I read stuff like that, it really makes sense to me in a lot of ways. And so anyway, I don't know, does that help you with the cat stuff?
Well, it's just fascinating because I used to be allergic to cats when I was young, and so did Christy, and now neither of us are allergic to cats.
Interesting.
And we have 3 cats. Maybe I literally sleep with a cat on my face almost every night.
You lucky dog.
Yeah. I also have those sleeping on me also, but they don't fit on my facial area. So the dogs are like wedging in from the sides, and the cat's like, oh yeah.
Dude, heck yeah. No, that's interesting, because maybe there was something before, like in your other years when you were allergic to them, that was constantly kind of coming through. I don't know. But like I said, I don't put all my eggs in one basket, because I want to be open to the possibility of some of this being how it is, and then there being other factors. And the society we live in today, kind of just like what you were talking about earlier, we're exposed to so much crap that it's hard for me to think that, there couldn't be something that was ingested that would, turn into something horrible like cancer, or would have caused your body to get to a state where it could have developed cancer or whatever it be, and so I just know too that there's an emotional connection with what happens to us on the level of illness, and it continues to kind of really put things into perspective for me. And when all this stuff kind of started coming through for me, and especially when the pandemic happened and everything else, I was just like, wow, man, it made me like totally reevaluate my relationship with herbalism and herbs and how I look at them, and thinking like, well, is it that when you take an herb, the herb is literally just like stimulating that organ system that is innately going to heal you regardless, but the herb kind of just pushes it along. And the herbs also have an ability to help us heal on an emotional level as well. So anyway, there's my little spiel on all that stuff. But I figured you'd be a perfect person to kind of just like continue to crack at this egg, because it's an interesting one. And I plan on having more people who are like really studying German new medicine, and it's like their thing, so that I can start to understand it better and maybe, help other people understand it.
What I have to wonder is if their medicine would be more effective if they put it in more of a natural formation. So part of the way that they end up patenting medicine is they'll take something like, you look at a THC molecule and you can look at it in its different formations, and each formation it does has slightly different effects, but they can't own any of those formations because those are natural formations and just produced by the plant. So if they want to have something they can patent, they have to take and, like, if things attach here, here, and here, they are like, oh no, it's going to come out of here instead of here and here. Like, and it's just the way the Legos are put together is slightly different. Now, I just have to wonder if, when you look at vibration, that's going to slightly tweak it without a doubt. And you have to wonder if part of where the real Licky, you have to wonder if heat time. You have to wonder if part of, it's such a joy, right? That they've changed that vibration, if they brought that back into a more natural alignment, if their synthetic things wouldn't work more like what they want them to, if it wouldn't at that point maybe even go back and help the emotional end like the original alignment did. And it's not just the changing of the alignment in order to patent it that's causing the vast majority of the problem.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I'm thoroughly always just fascinated with all this stuff and health in general. And so whether it be emotional or physical or spiritual or what have you, because it's just so important. And I think that the way things are going, they're taking people's focus away from it, and they're wanting to police people and tell them how to be healthy. And it's like the total opposite of what we all need, which is also always, one of the things that, I'm over trying to wake people up with this stuff or convince people that this is how it is, or maybe it's like this. It's like, whatever, man. If you're not ready for it in this time, then that's fine. But I'm going to try and figure it out regardless. So
100%. And honestly, you're going to get more people that pay attention to what you say because you are living it than you ever were just trying to tell everybody to do this thing you're not doing. Like, it's that entire, you can't feed people out of a field that you haven't farmed. Like, you can tell them all about how these farming practices and doing this field be so great, but nobody's going to eat out of it unless you've done it. And so that just applies across the board. And it really just shows a fear where we have to pull everybody else into these lifestyle choices that we're making. Because at the end of the day, that really is what it is. These people do have their own free will. And if you want to eat McDonald's, do I think that's the greatest idea? No. Can I show you science that says different, that it's not a good idea? Yes. Can you show me science that says it's just fine? Yep. Are you going to do what you want to do? Yep. So, just like with the pandemic thing, where I know a lot of people got real harsh on the vaccine end, where they're like getting real hateful toward people that got it. My mom and dad both got scared and got it. My dad for work. My mom thought she needed it to go see my sister's college graduation. Did it make sense to me? No. Would I take away their free will? Because I know my mom's wanted to take mine away before. Would I take, and couldn't? Would I take hers away? Like, no, if she wants to go do that to herself, that's hers. She can do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I felt the same way where, in the beginning of the whole thing, I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of anger for the way people were treating people who chose to not wear a mask or, whatever, where it was like, whoa, this is a crazy thing. And I found myself getting angry until I looked at it more from that perspective of like, well, hey, like if they want to wear 5 masks and whatever, fine, whatever. I'm not going to allow it to affect me to bring down myself to their level, to even start trying to think about how they're thinking. Like, who cares? And so that was like a huge, big shift that happened for me during that time. And it was a gift, all that stuff was a gift in its own way, because people had to show their cards and whatever. And then it was an opportunity to accept them for who they are and then just allow it to go, and I think that's one of the best things you can do in life in general. So yeah, amen to that. And yeah, it was like, people, oh, you idiot, oh, you retard for doing it. It's like, wow, look at all the energy you're spending. Well, you could be like doing something way more productive. And you're like causing yourself.
Why are you angry with that person for doing something with themselves? I don't care what they're doing with themselves. Why are you angry? Why, I mean, at some point it just comes down to, that's no different than choice of fashion. Like, where some people, do I think the kids that have their pants hanging off their ass look cool? No. Am I going to walk around screaming at them? No. Like, it's you want to do that, that's your problem, not mine. Like, you get to live your life. Do all people want to walk around in a hoodie basically permanently, and mountain boots and shit covered pants? Probably not. Like, but that's the way I like it.
Yeah, totally. Dude, right on, man. Well, my friend, we're getting close to the 2-hour mark. So with that said, I want to thank you again for coming and hanging out and sharing all your knowledge. And thank you so much for having your diagram with the 3 minds and stuff. And I'm just like super excited for all this information to flow out to the other people. So as usual, can you tell people where they can find you if they don't know where, and if there's anything you're excited about that's coming up down the pipeline on Women's Alchemy or what have you? Just the time is yours to share.
Absolutely. Well, first, I want to thank you for saying what you did about when I came out on Train and on my position on Train and germ theory, where I didn't really crap on Train theory. I just didn't piecemeal buy that. And I lost a lot of people. There was a lot of anger over that. And I don't change my mind about it. You can be angry at me about it. That's fine. I don't need everybody to be on my team. That's okay. And but it is nice when people are, and I appreciate you saying that. That is real nice. I'm Benjamin Balderson. You can find me on YouTube and all the different podcast apps. If you want to listen to the full show, I only do that on Rockfin. Rockfin's never tried to censor me in any way. It's a freer speech. So we do the second hour where things that I might not want to have said in the YouTube hour because they are extremely censory. I will say on the Rockfin side. We got Flattoberfest coming up this year. It looks like it's probably going to be in Vegas. So that's going to be fantastic. I did an interview this morning with Oversharing with their crew. So
nice.
I'm on their show. Yep, you betcha. And as I showed before, I got Darren Weissman coming. He's new in the community. Nobody's had him. And he's worked with Emoto and applied that more to the human body. I'm pretty excited about that coming up. Can you please grab Cutie when you're done? Yeah, come check us out on Rockfin. That's really the place to come check us out. And other than that, I'm really looking forward to, I think this summer there's going to be a lot more meetup situations. People are pretty over not meeting up. Flattoberfest is going to be again West Coast, so I'm super excited about that. I'm really hoping you and Mario come down for that, and a bunch of other people.
Yeah, we're going to try and work that one in for sure. We're trying to work that one in. Oh yeah, yes, definitely.
Nice. And I got a computer now, so I am working on acquiring a tablet so I can put animation, and it's not just my hand drawings. I should have showed you the other drawing that for the 3 minds also, because that one really just brings it all together so well. But I'm working on the salt side this year, so trying to bring everything together and for a more complete presentation, and then be able to animate it and make it more visual, so it's not just me talking, because I realize that I put out a lot of information in a short amount of time, and it's hard to take all that in and chew it all down. Get some indigestion.
Yeah, totally. It's like, I got heartburn, man. That's funny. Oh man.
Say less
Awesome,
things.
yeah. Oh man, that's so cool. I love you so much, and I love Christy, and I hope that we get to connect this summer. I have a feeling we will, and just wanted to thank you again. And yeah, I really meant what I said when yeah, you doing that, you coming out with the terrain stuff and being like, hold on a second, you were like you were the pillar in that. And that's what we need. We need more pillars around who are like, wait, let's hold on. Like, let me really, really think about this. And so anyway, you are that to me, and I appreciate it. And I love you very much. So for anyone who wants to stick around.
You.
Oh, thank you.
And Christy meant it when she said she's already planning trips that include you this summer. So good luck getting out of it.
Oh, I believe her, man, and I look forward to it. So I've got a few updates for people who want to stick around, but other than that, I'm going to let Ben go so he can take care of all the things that they need to take care of. Love you very much, and we'll talk and see you soon.
Love you guys.
Bye. All righty, guys. Hey, thanks for hanging out. Yeah. What a great one. Whew, this was awesome. And I had such a great time talking with Ben. And oh man, I'm like grinning from ear to ear because it was so fun, and was able to really pick his brain on a lot of things that I wanted to pick his brain about. And so it was really awesome. I already have a feeling that I'm going to be coming back and listening to this one again to just, reabsorb some stuff. So as usual, I've got some slides for you guys. And yeah, thanks everybody. I've been kind of looking at the chat, just trying to pay attention, but then also look at the chat. So thanks for hanging out tonight. And I'm glad you guys enjoyed the episode. It was super fun. So next week's show, I have Lee Thunder Chicken coming on. We are going to talk about cannabis. Now, I am familiar with Lee Thunder Chicken mostly through Facebook, actually, because I started seeing what he was posting with all of his work with cannabis. And I was like, whoa, I'm very intrigued. I want to learn more about what this man does, how he makes his extracts, all the things that he does. He's growing beautiful cannabis. He has gardens and all these things. So we're going to chop it up next week on the 28th, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, as usual. Again, Patreon. If you're wanting to sign up and become a patron, you can do that at patreon.com/thehealinghome. My last Thursday live stream is coming up this Thursday. It's the first one that I'll be doing. And it actually might be an exclusive with Mario and I both. So just so you know that if you're a patron, you'll be able to have access to that. And you will also have access to me and whoever else will be with me. You can ask us questions. And if you wanted to, really get into something specific, that would be the time. I also have things planned for maybe presentations with last Thursday. And what I'm thinking might happen is that the patrons will be able to be with us live on the last Thursday live stream and ask questions and stuff. And that will be the exclusive area of it. And then I may end up publishing them to the public like after the fact. But if it's just out to the public, you're not going to be able to ask questions and you won't be able to hang out in the moment. So that's just a little incentive for patrons. And then also you will get an early announcement of what my full moon offering is for the month before anyone else. And you'll be able to be added to a wait list if you want to purchase the products before anyone else has access to them. And one last thing with Patreon, I have 3 tiers. It's 3, 6, 9. That holy trinity. 3, 6, 9, $3, $6, $9. And yeah, it would be an awesome way to support me if you're not feeling buying products or anything like that. So here's the full moon offering for this month. Still is the horseradish fire cider. I have it right here, and you can't even see me because I'm not on the screen. But yeah, I just saw too in the chat. Rachel said, "Packing peanuts. I thought we were friends." Well, I gotta say, my justification for the packing peanuts is that I got a Uline order in a huge box, and it was just full of packing peanuts, and I'm like, oh my god, what am I going to do with all these packing peanuts? And I like refuse to buy shipping supplies, so anything I get that has a shipping supplies, I keep it and I use it. So I'm working through some packing peanuts. So just a heads up, anyone who makes an order, you may get some packing peanuts. My apologies. I know, not my favorite either, but it is what it is. So that's what's going on there. And here's my menu for anyone who's interested in looking at what I actually have. And yeah, the horseradish fire cider. It's really lovely. And here she is right here. It's a 4-ounce bottle. A little goes a long way. I like to take about 2 teaspoons of it, and I've said this before, but I like to put it on ice and I just drink it straight because I'm kind of savage like that. But it's really good. I've been using it to make salad dressings, and that's been really good. I used it to make coleslaw last week, and that was really nice. So it just has a really nice, like, savory yet spicy flavor. It's not overly spicy because I'm not a big, like, spice gal, but the horseradish really brings a nice kick, and there's some spruce in there too, and rosemary, which kind of gives it another twist, in terms of just kind of pumping up the vitamin C that the spruce brings. And it's really lovely. Again, michelleshealinghome@gmail.com for questions, for orders. Michelle's Healing Home. Did I say the Gmail part? Doesn't matter. Anyway, you can find me at michelleshealinghome.com for all sorts of stuff. You can also text me 503-568-1569. You can schedule consultations with me. And yeah, if you want to get down to the nitty gritty of something, let me know and maybe we can work it out. And lastly, Mario is going live this Friday again with Elsie King to do their part 2 of the symbolism of astrology. So that'll be a really great episode. I'm really excited for both of them to hash out the part 2. The part 1 was excellent. And it was really nice to hear both of them riff. They are both just brilliant minds, and I really appreciate what happens when they come together. So you can go to Symbolic Studies on YouTube, and that's where they'll be streaming that live this Friday at, I believe, at 4 p.m. And with that said, that's the show for tonight. Thank you all for hanging out. I hope you all are doing well out there. And much love to everybody for being around. And this was a really fun one. So take care. And until next time, we will see you real soon.